we want to adjust any of these panes, we can do so either by using toolbar items, hotkeys, or just really closing these out. So you can see there's a little X next to a lot of these guys, and if we click on that X, then they'll go away. And that gives us a little more screen to kind of play with here, which is really pretty helpful. Also, you can see that that's kind of tied to a couple of these buttons. So, we can bring the parameter editor back by just pressing this toolbar button, and that the material map browser is over here as well. If we go to the tools menu, you'll see all three of the things that you can kind of hide and show here, which is the material map browser, O, the parameter editor, which is P, and the navigator, which is N. So I find myself using these hotkeys quite a bit in order to adjust what's going on in the scene. So if I just hit P, it'll bring up my parameter editor. O will hide the material map browser, and N is going to bring up my navigator. So P and N will kind of bring those guys both back. And whatever they were kind of before we hid them, they'll keep their little ratios. So usually I'll set that up like that and hide these and bring them back one at a time. So I think that's pretty useful because this is really a pretty big interface, and you want to be able to kind of customize it as much as you possibly can in order to keep as much screen real estate going and save yourself on that screen real estate. So next thing I'd like to look at is creating some groups and assigning different materials to groups so that we don't have to be kind of scrolling all the way throughout here. If you click on this little down arrow here, you can see we can make a new group, and I'm going to call this Mike. And that's just going to allow me to take any materials I want, as well as maps or controllers, and put them in this group. So I might know that I want to put the ray trace material, which I use pretty often, as well as standard and blend, and kind of pop them in here. Just reorder that. And then if I want to go into maps, I'll just scroll down some. And I'll say we definitely use a bitmap a lot, cellular map, fall off, mix. Always using the output, and we'll just drag maybe our noise map up there if we haven't already. Nope. So I can kind of customize that. And I could do this with controllers too. So if I go into controllers, maybe float controller, maybe an audio controller, or something like a noise float controller, I would use quite a bit. So I'll put that one in there, and that will kind of save out there. So now I can really customize what I have here, and that way I can quickly start to add different nodes very easily without surfing through this huge material map browser. The other thing that you'll note is when I right click, I get all of these rollouts. So I get materials, maps, controllers, etc. And because I've added this new group, I get my Mike group, which has all of these in it, which is really pretty handy. So let's just say I want to right click and go to Mike and create a ray trace material. I can do that here, and then I can assign that to my teapot. And I'll just double click on this material to bring up the parameter editor. And I'll say, you know what, I want this really reflective. And I'm going to bring that diffuse color down to a dark blue. And we'll just render that out. And then I have my nice chrome material set up on this teapot. Now let's just take this a little further and start to add some maps here. So for my reflection, I'm just going to go in here to reflect and just drag out a new wire, which is going to give me my right click menu to add any maps that I want. So I can either go to maps and choose from here, or I actually already have a fall off map. So while ray trace has the ability to use like a Fresnel type effect, this will kind of give us that effect. And now when I render this out, we're going to get kind of a slightly different effect where we have the reflections happening on the glazing surfaces, which might be something that you want. So we've kind of added that in there. And then I can even go in and just go, I'll double click on this, And I can go in and I can say, all right, well, in that white area, which is here, I want to add a noise map. And in this noise map, I'll double click here and I will bring up the high or bring down the high threshold to make it a little whiter. And you can see that propagating here. So a couple things that I can do is I can double click on this in order to make it a little bigger so I can kind of see how that's happening. And then I'll just make the size a little smaller. And then let's see how this renders out. So now you can see that noise pattern coming in there, and while that's okay, I think I might even want it a bit smaller than that. So we'll try like a zero 0.3 and maybe make it fractal just so that we kind of break up this setup there. So we get this kind of noisy type of thing going on there. And you can start to see we don't have too many things in here, but when I am in here, you can start to see where the navigator comes into play. So if we wanted to go back to that gradient map or something like that, we can navigate really easy through there. So that's how you can start to add in some maps to a basic object and drag out a few of them. We'll look at a couple of different methods of doing this besides just dragging out next.